Cool.
Are people still coming in, Ed, or should I make a start?
Yeah, I would start and then I can just let people in as they join. Cool.
So before we begin, just to let you all know that we're going to be recording this talk, and the recorded version will be available to view afterwards on our YouTube channel. So when it comes to the Q&A, in the second part of the session, if you're not happy to be in that recording, then you can pop your question in the chat. Otherwise, feel free to raise your hand at the end or unmute yourself and ask questions directly. So with that, we will start the recording. You okay to do that, Ed?
Yeah, I've already started it, sorry.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. So hello, welcome everyone. I'm really delighted to welcome you all here today or here online on Zoom for a brief but hopefully insightful launch of our latest book, Back to Basics Volume 2. My name's Hannah Fletcher and I co-direct Sustainable Darkroom alongside Ed Carr, who will be saying a few words next. Back to Basics, this second volume, has been written by Andrés Pardo, who we will hear from after Ed and is with us today. Andrés Pardo runs the platform CuriosoLab, and this was, we worked closely with him to publish this second volume under Sustainable Darkroom. So this book is really a follow-on from volume 1, which hopefully a lot of you have copies of or have read copies of somewhere from libraries or borrowed friends and not given them back. The first volume provides readers with, I'd say, a really solid framework for how to approach, make, work with, and understand low toxicity developers. It's a book that's a wealth of information that you can return to again and again, whether you're making a developer for the first time or whether you are a well-seasoned Darkroom user. So that first book got some very well-deserved amazing reviews from our readers, and it's been really great to see it going into libraries and universities across the globe. Here's some of the lovely comments and reviews that we got. So congratulations, Andrés. And this second book that I'm happy to be presenting today takes all of that foundational knowledge set out in volume 1, and it pushes it. It pushes it through cycles of decomposition, through carbon cycles. It stretches it into syrups. It blocks up our developing tanks with mud. It breaks the rules while simultaneously delicately educating you along the way as to why those rules need to be broken. In the draft of this second volume, Andrés had so many recipes that we actually couldn't even quite fit them all into this second volume. I'm in constant awe of the way that his mind works and the dedication to his research. So I'm sure we'll have a chance to feature some of those cut out recipes that didn't make it in the final editing stages in other forms through our Patreon, which Andrés co-runs with us, or through future mixed contributor style publications. So there's so much to delve into in this small book, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it's received and also put to use by all of you. Alongside the text within the book and some imagery by both Andrés and us, You'll also find a selection of incredible imagery, which has been produced by our community members, as they've tested out and experimented with these recipes across their own work. Amongst the pages, you'll find works by Inga Tillier, Andrew K. Thompson, Vanessa Cowling and Svea Josephy from Sustainable Photo Garden UCT, Bruce Dunbar, Melanie King, Eileen White, Sophie Sherwood, Liv Harris, Anne-Marie Bouchard, and Kathy Kinnikin. So thank you for all of those that submitted their works for consideration in the book. We're really glad to have you all on board. So I'm now going to pass over to Ed.
Thank you. Hello. So yeah, I was the editor for both books. This one, perhaps more involved with an editor, and I'm now an expert in the recipes that were in the book, purely through that process. So recently I've been developing with rusted metal quite a lot, and yeah, it's weird. It's not something I've ever done before, but I've found it to be very, I guess for a lot of people, like developing with plants and stuff has been like a exciting new entry into the world of like sustainable darkroom processing and all that kind of stuff. But for me, because I've done that for so long now, I guess I'd been kind of used to that. So then having this ability to now develop in rusted metal and all the other stuff that's in the book has, yeah, given a new kind of developing life to my practice and developing and stuff like that, which some of you may have seen if you've seen my Instagram stories of me collecting rust and stuff. So yeah, hopefully if you have pre-ordered this book or are going to get a copy, that you can have that same enjoyment of collecting metal from the street that I've had. Anyway, I thought I would just read my introduction to the book as a way to kind of summarize my thoughts on it. So yeah, I'm just going to do that now. I stand overlooking the city, which has been described as a capitalist utopia. The flat blocks around me with a million tiny windows clicking on and off, winking to the distant stars above. Singapore, the city-state idolized by architects of Brexit as a model of peak capitalism, a place that London could strive to become, with clean streets, shiny towers of contemporary architecture, and a permanent underclass imported from surrounding developing nations to serve the elite that rule from above. J.G. Ballard would be proud. I think about the sustainable darkroom, feeling a slight loss as to my purpose and place in it all. That and a sense of guilt. I didn't walk to Singapore. I flew via Japan. Sacrilege to the Church of Sustainable Living with which I sometimes collide. In my flash of guilt, I have visions of throwing myself from the balcony, sailing through the hot, thick, humid air towards the searing concrete, phone cameras filming as I career past their kitchen and bedroom windows, a pink and pathetic blur falling through time, lenses pointed, film reels flailing around me, gelatin flecking my skin, silver staining my tongue, photochemistry leaking from my eyes, plastic and oil and bones beating against my chest, slipping through photographic time to where it all began, to record light and place in a two-dimensional bottle as the perfect, static image. And as I hit the ground below, nothing remains but a shadow of regret. We all feel this sense of guilt sometimes, generated by neoliberal think tanks to place blame on us, instead of the corporations that dictate and destroy our planetary future. This individualist mindset has infected all areas of society, including photography. Think of the popular image of an Ansel Adams type photographer, alone against the wilderness, armed only with a camera and the ferocious desire to capture our living world. But this is not solely an image. Instead, it is an individualist metaphor for how we conceive photographic practice. But reading Andre's words in Back to Basics, Volume 1 and 2, you are confronted with a starkly different vision for photography. One where the photographer is not alone, but surrounded by others, human and non-human, in a garden of image-making plenty. A photographic commune where knowledge is a shared resource, not to line the pockets of polluting megacorps in some mythical capitalist utopia, but in advancing an equitable future for generations to come. So while you've been busy with your practice, Andreas has been quietly working away, digging the beds and furrows of our photographic garden, ready for the seeds to be planted and fruits to grow. With this book now in your possession, consider it an invitation to the garden and the beginning of a long journey. A journey not like a road with beginning and end, but a sprawling and unpredictable tendril slowly working its way across the unknown. Cool. So, with all that said, I will now introduce Andreas. So, thank you, Andreas, if you want to say a few things.
Well, thank you very much first to everyone online today. For me, it's been a joy working on this text. It's quite an interesting way how it happens, okay? Because my wife always are saying you need to write everything down, and but never happen. I have some notes, and I keep on collecting tiny notebooks with recipes and stuff, and then I think it was like 2 years ago, Hannah emails arrived saying, why don't we work on a text on everything I've been researching over a decade, approx. So I started writing. I take like 3 or 4 weeks to write, and at some point I share my first draft with Hannah, and she drew a line on the text, and she said, I think up to here is one book. Is that the one is already released? So from here forward, it's the second volume. That is the one that we are presenting today. That, as Hannah said, it's a continuation of my research. And one thing that I think is interesting that is that despite I'm trying or I'm willing to work in like under a scientific method, I'm not under a scientific method. So I'm going back and forth all the time. Okay. So when you read volume 1 and volume 2, I think that when you are reaching the final pages of the volume 2, you're gonna start thinking of going back again to the first pages of the volume 1. Okay? Because it's the way I keep on working, like, and that's because I discover new things, reading papers or books, or someone asked me something online or in a on-person workshop that sparks me some stuff to start a new research, or something happened during a process that I realized that I need to move back again to review part of my research and keep on working from that. So that is like the context of the book. Okay, I try, and I think we try to put it in a linear way, but in reality, it's kind of a mess in the way that it happens. For example, right now I'm researching again plant extractions, but in a different way. That I think that plant extraction for me is over, but I read a new book and I discover new things, so I'm going back to plant extraction. And saying that, I think that both books are like an open source research. Like, this is the starting point for many of you, and I think that I will be happy if you keep on growing this research, okay, more than you process with the recipes on the book. I'm gonna be really happy if you process with the recipes on the book and you got amazing results or results that you like. but if you take the research on like if it's yours and you push the boundaries to keep this growing, I think that's it's going to be the summit for it. I'm going to thank everyone on the Sustainable Darkroom, especially Hannah and Ed, that Ed pushed me quite a lot during this second volume. Like, why are you saying that here? How's that happen? What do you mean? People will not understand that. Are you sure that is correct? You have a source for that. You have a source for that. And so it's I really enjoyed that part of the process of Ed editing and taking the time to deeply think on what is being written and say, okay, but why are you so sure of that, or who says that? Okay, so because that made me going back again to my notebooks and say, okay, I read this here, there's a paper from this here. So that made me quite sure that what's on the book have solid sources. Okay, that I think is quite interesting. At any time, one could say, "Oh, I make a mistake here, so I can correct that." But I'm quite happy of Ed pushing me so hard with that kind of things, because I'm quite confident that the sources on the book are really accurate. So you can work with it with quite confidence. And of course, I want to thank to all the featured artists that many participate on the Discord of Sustainable Darkroom or in my private workshops. And that's, you know, like the images on the book shows that there's a different way of film processing or approaching the lab rather than buying a pre-pack chemical from a branded house. So I just want to say that I really enjoy the process, and I hope that you enjoy reading the book. So I'm open to questions or
Great. Thanks,
comments
Andrés.
or whatever thing.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions they are wondering, it could be related to either of the volumes, because as Andrés said, the research all links together in different ways. So yeah, feel free to raise your hand or pop something in the chat and we can read it out for you.
I guess I'll start things off because I know these sometimes good to get a few starter questions going with these Zoom calls. I'm curious where like the iron processing came from, like the research behind it. Was it just something that kind of came to you, or yeah, just I suppose like talking. I know the book is more than just about iron processing, but because I've been doing a lot of it lately, I am curious if you could talk briefly about the history of that and like interestingly how it functions differently to because you don't use vitamin C and stuff.
So how I approach it, it's when I was a kid, I have a chemistry box game for kids. Okay, that there I have iron sulfate, iron copper sulfate, and zinc and many other type of metals that you play doing reactions. So I know how the displacement and redox works in with irons. So I was reading a letter from Talbot to some bloke in the mid 100, and aside from oak galls, that it's like it's really common to know that Talbot uses gallic acid extracted from oak galls. He mentioned iron protosulfate. So I was living in Mexico back then, so I started to think that maybe iron protosulfate was used at some sort in Talbot process. So I started to read some chemistry papers on the reduction potential of iron related to silver, and see that iron can process, or it's a possibility that iron can process. So I head to the drugstore and buy some anemia pills, because my mother and father are doctors, so I know that anemia pills are iron, because I heard that too much. And so I go to the drugstore, I buy some anemia pills that is not iron sulfate or protosulfate, it's another type of sulfate, but at the end it's iron. So I do my first test with anemia pills. And despite the first test is quite a mess, it's in the book, I can see the separation of the frames on the 16 millimeters stripe of film. So I start working on it with the anemia pills. And then when that kind of things happen to me, when I start walking around, for whatever reason the universe has, I start to see iron laying around. So when I start to see iron all over the place, is to say, okay, well, it should be a way of using that iron to have the source that I need to process film. So I start looking for ways of taking iron out of the pieces of metal. And then I found, I think it was a video on YouTube that explained how to get rust out of tools like screwdrivers. And I said, hey, that's what I need. So that I start with citric acid, white vinegar. I tried sulfuric acid, chloric acid, but because I'm really willing to, at some point, this whole research in photography can be translated into school kids. I say, okay, let's do not use sulfuric or chloric acid. Let's stick to citric or acetic acid, like lemon juice. So they can build at school iron developers to process, for example, the pinhole images. That's kind of my what I'm braining out lately. Okay, how to translate everything this into a school thing, so that can do everything what's in the book, but being kids. So that is how I started with iron, and I like a lot iron, because when I moved back to Uruguay, there's a lot of iron laying around. I know maybe it's not so easy in the UK, but here you pass through near a construction site, and there's iron everywhere. Is that answering your question, Ed?
Yeah, I mean, completely. Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, where I'm based at the moment, in a town called Middlesbrough in the north, it was like a place for steel industry, so there is a lot of waste iron actually. But I was also interested in, I suppose, I think calling it like an ecological practice, and I think the common perception of ecological would be more associated with foraging for plants, for example, because it just has that more like kind of archetypal ideal in our heads of what ecological is. It's plants, it's gardening, and so on and so forth. So yeah, interested as well about like the kind of going through these places and these kind of histories of industry, and how that is an ecological practice to you, I suppose, or if it is.
Yeah, it is, but maybe for me it's more systemic than ecological, okay? Because it uses as much part of the system as it can. Because as you said, like the ecological practice is more related to foraging plants, collecting what is falling from the trees or stuff like that. But if I say it's like a more practice related to the whole system, I think in the system enters the industrial factories and the minings and all that stuff that leaves behind waste that are not common in a film lab, like a piece of a rusty road. Okay, but what is more interesting to me about that is that once you know that you can process with iron, you're gonna start spotting iron all over the places, and you're gonna start collecting it. And I think more important than that is that it's like you're gonna be like an expanded view, so you're gonna be like in a panoramic view. So you're gonna start thinking another type of things that can be used or as a developer, or as a washing aid, or as a fixing agent. There are many things in nature. We are discussing about crowds today on Adrian's post from fixer making from crowd's feather. So I think that what is important, I think that is that the book will open a little bit your view to start thinking and looking for other type of resources and sources all over the places. I think that's quite interesting. And if it happens, I'm done.
So yeah, very briefly on iron, just before, because we've got another question from Eileen. Does that mean potentially you could also extract it from, say, iron-rich soil or iron-rich natural things? Obviously, iron is natural, but I mean, like, you get like very around mining sites where there is iron, you'll have like red soil and stuff. Could you theoretically build a developer from that, or would it be much more difficult?
I was helping an artist from Canada, Seed. Seed. I just remember Seed. And she is willing to do like watergrams, but with clay, with rich iron clay. So she approached me and asked me different type of questions about how iron works, and if I think the iron red clay on the shores of where she lives will work. And it's like always like, okay, we need to do a test. Okay, so go to the shore, collect some red clay, mix with wood ash, stamp it over a piece of photographic paper, fix it, and let's see what is left behind so we can see if something is happening. And it works, okay? They're faint images, but it works. So we always need to think on what we are trying to build, because if we are pursuing like the pristine black and white image processed on IL4 film with photochemistry or the other way, well, maybe iron-rich soil will not be good for that. I mean, you're not going to have like a truly dense negative, like amazing black and amazing highlights using iron soil. But if you change your mind and say, okay, let's see how the soil has to offer, okay, and you test it and you process and you like what you get, okay, and that way will work. I'm still thinking that everything can process, okay? So So iron soil will work. The black sands on the beaches during the winter, that is it's iron oxide on the sand. You can easily turn iron oxide into iron carbonate to process. Okay, so you just need to read a book or read a chemistry book or ask GPT how to turn iron oxide into iron carbonate, and taking care of your safety precautions, you can do that kind of things. So you can be processing with recovered iron. Iron is the most abundant metal on Earth, so it's quite easy to get it.
Cool. Thank you. Hannah, do you want to read out Eileen's question, or do you want?
Yeah, I can read it out. So Eileen has asked, is there an ultimate recipe that you'd like to achieve? And if so, what does that look like? Are you working on anything new in this respect at the moment?
Like an ultimate recipe? No, I don't think will be an ultimate recipe. I'm researching from like a couple of months of today about, I'm sure you know the Bach flowers, no? Like how Edward Bach extracts the vibrational energy from plants and is translated into the water. And if you drink that water, you can heal your body. Well, there's a theory related to that. You can believe it or not, it's a matter of faith at the end. There's a theory related to that water can hold the vibrational energy from the organic sources that are suspended into the water container when you put it under the sun. So I start thinking that maybe there's a way of processing film with energy. Okay, so let's forget about iron, let's forget about phenols, about hydroquinone metal. Maybe there's a way to process film with energy. So then I start to read about Kirlian photography and Baraduc spectral photography, and the guys during the beginning of the photography that are trying to capture ghosts and spectres and stuff like that. So at the moment, I'm working with that kind of things, trying to see if just energy can process, and trying to understand if that works, how to expect. Yeah, I'm not gonna be expecting like a normal black and white negative. I think it's gonna be quite different, maybe a more abstract stuff like that. That is what I'm working in, and the final recipe. I think my journey starts from the last steps, because when I was working in Churubusco in Mexico, that I standardized with Maribel and the guys in the chemistry department of the lab, the simple developer recipe that is like, it's in book one, it's like most of everything is based on that formula. For me, that is my final recipe. It happens at the beginning, but for me, it's that one, because it works. I've been testing it for many years. I see people around the world that tested the simple one recipe and works quite well under different conditions, different water, different ascorbic acid, carbonates, films, types of shooting, approaching to agitating the tank. So I think that is it's my the recipe that I can say, okay, that's my final recipe, because it's being tested for so long and I keep working consistency that, okay, that is.
On that kind of same frame of thought, I guess, I was wondering whether you, in your own work, had a particular affinity for any of the recipes aside from Simple One. You know, a number of the practitioners who sent in work to be featured in the book particularly enjoy working with, you know, some of those recipes that they've sent in things for, whether that's working with the muddy developers because of their consistency, or you know, Ed is particularly enjoying working with the iron developers. And I was wondering whether you had your own particular affinity for any of the recipes.
I like to work to whatever I have handy. Okay, so ascorbic acid has become part of my home and my lab. Okay, so that's a must to have. But the rest is like, well, if I have a hydroxide, I build the minimal developer. If I have carbonate, I build simple. If I also have sodium bicarbonate, I can build simple 2 or simple 3. So I'm not really attached to a specific formula in terms of like the holy grail of things. That I'm really happy that people use the formulas, publish it in the book in that way. But in photography is full of people that say, okay, I'm gonna process all my rolls with Rodinal because it's like the micro contrast of it. It's quite amazing. So photography, it's also full of things that have really no sense. Right. It's just that you like it to work with that formula. Okay, it's not because anything else. It's that okay, you like it. For me, it's perfect. But in my case, I prefer to work with whatever thing is handy. And if at hand I have a pack of D62, that is the common paper developer from Kodak, I use it. Okay, because I think that it's better to use it and properly degrade it, to discard it, rather than to keep it getting old, because at the end, if the developer gets old, someone's going to throw away, and it's going to be worse that way than you using it and properly degrading and disposing it.
Yeah, that reminds me of a section of the book when I was doing the kind of first read through, and one of the recipes uses hydroquinone, and it really threw me because I thought, why is he putting this in a recipe, you know? And it was that, you know, same, you kind of reason, your reasoning around it was that same thing, that you had it in the lab anyway, and so therefore, you know, you would rather use it in some way and learn, you know, put it into use in this recipe than to just have it go to waste and, you know, not be utilized and then not be degraded properly.
Yeah, for example, I collaborate and work and teach at the photo club here in Montevideo. And there's a place where if someone has something related to photograph that are willing to get rid of, they head to the photography club. And I say, hey, I got this bunch of paper, film, and chemistry. I don't want anymore. You want it? And the club is receiving on a weekly basis, especially old guys, old people, with boxes full of cans of hydroquinone and sulfides and stuff like that, that maybe are 30, 35 years old. So they bought it back when they have the darkroom at home, or they work doing photo work, stuff like that. And they keep the chems on the house. So, okay, now for me, that is kind of it's going to the trash bin or it's going to the photo club. So they send it to the photo club. So how you can get rid of that? I think it's better to test it, to properly work with it, to see how things will came out with that kind of chemistry like hydroquinone, and then properly degrade and use it. Hydroquinone can turn black on the container, so you should say, oh, it's not gonna work, but you can test it that it's gonna be processing still.
Wow, thanks. Okay, does anyone have any other questions? Or things that maybe if anyone wants to share any experiences of working with the first book as well? Very happy to hear.
I guess if no one has a question, I have like a kind of final question. Oh, no, we've got one. Will there be recipes for neutralizing specific chemicals?
In the specific chemicals? Well, name specific chemicals, because there are many specific chemicals in the film lab. If I write on what I'm remembering about the book, it says that you need to neutralize and use UV to degrade. That is the most common things to use. I always say the same, and you need to look what things works around us. So if you think on the places where all the water from the waste from the city goes, that they have like this giant pools of wastewater, is what that water is receiving is UV from the sun. So UV from the sun is the key for degrading chemicals coming from the lab. So put in a container, send it to the garden, take the lid out, and let the oxygen and UV do the rest.
But yeah, I was just going to ask if no one else has any questions to you, Andrés. Do you? I've asked you this before, but I'm going to put you on the spot again and ask you it. Do you? I mean, a lot of people probably think this as well when they engage with this practice. Like, do you think there is a possibility for? I know you've been doing work around reshooting shot film, so resensitizing used film and stuff like that. But do you think there is a hypothetical future where there could be a kind of closed darkroom system or an entirely holistic circular photographic system that doesn't rely on, you know, the outward extraction of materials? I suppose like an actual fully sustainable darkroom.
Yeah, well, I want to say that for me, a truly sustainable photography based on silver should start working with recycled silver. Okay, we know that the brands uses, let's say, freshly mined silver. Okay, even if it's spent 50 years in the vault, it's shiny silver. Okay, it was never used in anything else. But I know, for example, that you can, and I tested and I do experiments with it to reclaim silver from the fixer and reuse it to build salt paper. Not film on a plastic base, but I do salt paper. So there are places here in the city that sells silver stuff, from crosses to dishes to kettles to whatever things it's silver, they sell it. Okay, they buy and they sell. So what happens if we approach several dry plates? You know, this guy that builds the dry plates. There's a project that builds dry plates for big format cameras. Or what happens if we approach washi and say, hey, why if you start using recycled silver? So, and maybe we need some fundings to build a lab that turns this recycled silver, like your aunt tray. You need your aunt tray still now, so let's dissolve it and make silver again and send it to a guy that builds silver nitrates, and then the silver nitrate goes to the guy who do plates or film or whatever thing, or paper. Because one thing that is quite common, that there's an idea that just one people or one lab should do the whole thing, you know. And no, it's that, like, okay, maybe the sustainable darkroom is an ecosystem of different darkrooms working together around the globe, that the common works ends in a sustainable photography. But I think recycling silver is a key point to build a truly sustainable photography based on silver, because there's all type of metals that can make images, like iron, copper, stuff like that. So using silver, that is the thing that we usually use. I think that's the way. Start to look around our grandmas and grandpas and aunts' kitchens to see what we can dissolve on nitric acid.
Cool. Well, maybe the next book can be, instead of extracting iron, but extracting silver from your dead grandma's stuff. Cool. Thank you. Sweet.
Great. Well, if no one has any other questions, we'll leave it there for this evening. It was always intended to be a short and sweet and hopefully insightful glimpse into the book. And yeah, we're having our in-person launch in just over 2 weeks' time in New York, and both Andres and I will be present there for that. So if anyone's based in or near New York, do come along. And thank you all for joining us.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Yeah.